And thank you to all our sponsors. Now let's get started with our keynote panel. I want to introduce Kathy Henrik to get things started.
Thank you very much and welcome everyone. It's really interesting. I think as the council, when we started planning this back in May of last year, there was this debate of could we be in person or would we still be virtual? And, I think we chose to continue to work virtual, and I'm so glad we did. But, it's interesting is despite the pandemic, talent is still an issue. And I think a very important topic for all of us today. It was interesting in the opening video, it talked about there being a gap in talent, both locally, but also nationally, but that we believe the talent is right here. And so I'm really excited to be able to spend this time with the panel today. So quick introduction, I'm the CEO of the Milwaukee Tech Hub Coalition, whose goal is to inclusively double tech talent here in the Milwaukee region. And, back in 2018, we did a survey or a study that showed that if we do nothing, there could be 31,000 open jobs in the Milwaukee region before 2025. And so this topic is critical. Last year we did one and it showed, yes, gaps exist. And even despite the pandemic, right, the roles in tech are continuing to grow. And it's so critical to both the personal and regional prosperity. So I'm really excited to have this distinguished set of guests here today, and I'm going to give them each the opportunity to introduce themselves as a way of talking about what we need to do to retain talent, to attract talent, and especially in light of the pandemic, what are some of the things that may have been different now than a year ago? So with that, I'm going to allow every one of them to introduce themselves, and maybe I'll start with you, Jer Doyle from Manpower.
Thank you very much, Kathy, and good morning. So I'm new to industry, new to Milwaukee. I've only been 4 months with the Manpower Group. I onboarded remotely, so I've had shown all the innovation and resilience, I guess, that the rest of you have shown as well. So that's been wonderful. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today and look forward to meeting you, hopefully in person in the not too distant future. So a bit about myself. So I lead Manpower's digital transformation and business innovation function. As you probably know, Manpower Group plays thousands of people across every industry in every state every day. And our business is people, skills, and work. So we monitor job demand across the country in real time. And I want to share some of the kind of key things we're seeing right now. I would say we're seeing kind of strong and sustained demand in what I call like 3 major buckets. I would say the first bucket is jobs that move things, so operations and logistics. I would say the second one is roles that help people, like healthcare, and finally, of course, roles that transform business, IT and tech, which is our world. The way we work, consume, and live our lives has kind of gone digital overnight, and today, every company needs to be a tech company. We've all heard that. I would say on the challenges, Kathy, the key thing that I'm seeing and hearing a lot of is, we've heard data is the new oil, but for me, skills is kind of the new currency. And if upskilling was important before, it is now urgent, to fill the pipeline talents of the future, to meet the demand of today and tomorrow.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more on just how critical the skills are in order to drive our future. So maybe with that, Diane, would you like to introduce yourself with Johnson Controls?
Sure. Diane Schwarz, CIO at Johnson Controls. I joined 6 months ago. So, Jer, much like you, I've had to do my entire transition during this pandemic, which means I haven't actually made my way up to Milwaukee, right? The entire interviewing, transition, onboarding experience has been remote, which I think gives me empathy for all of our other employees, IT or not, that are joining the company this way. So it's been interesting to think about the employee experience when you can't build culture in person. If anybody has figured that out, let me know. I'd love to learn more about it. And so let's see, a little bit more about me. I'm currently in Dallas, Fort Worth, which is going through the polar vortex. So I pulled out all of the winter gear that I purchased, anticipating I was going to need it for Milwaukee. So at least I get to use it this weekend for the year. And prior to this role, I was at Hunt, which is an oil company. And you know, that phrase, Jared, that you use, that data is the new oil. I don't know, with the price of oil in the last couple of years, I think we need to refresh that phrase. And before that, I was with Textron, which was also a large federated manufacturing company. So been around IT for a while. I've got staff across the world, but obviously a lot of great talent in Milwaukee. And I'm looking forward to when I can get to meet all of you in person and be part of the community.
Thanks very much, Diane. It's interesting. All three of you have this in common, that you're all relatively new to the Milwaukee region. So that may be a balance we talk about too. So Robert, if you would introduce yourself and your role at the Bucks.
Thanks very much, Kathy, and good morning, Milwaukee. So glad to be here. I'm the Chief Technology and Strategy Officer of the Milwaukee Bucks, which includes all of Fiserv Forum and the 30 acres of downtown land in Westtown that we are still developing. We're about halfway through. Yeah, so I've been here for about 3 years. It's been a really fun job. The way I describe the Bucks, we're a small business, about 300 employees, full-time employees, but a big brand, right? And a big brand within Milwaukee and Wisconsin, and it's just great to be engaged here. Just a small bit about myself. So kind of went from like an electrical engineer, deep in the weeds, designing transistors and things, all the ways before the Bucks to like an AT&T sales guy. So I love the kind of how we have the CIO forum here with United Way structured. I love the way business development executives get engaged. So I've been on both sides of the table there. So it's just great to be here. Talent is a really important part of the Bucks. Our charter right now, I mean, the past year has really shown us that even though we have a fantastic culture, there's definitely room for improvement around the diversity side of things. So really looking forward to sharing my insights there and collaborating with all of my fellow panelists. Thank you.
Yeah, so why don't we start there? As you talk about, culture, et cetera, we're really talking about, the existing workforce, and how do we need to create a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, et cetera, that allows us to retain talent here in the region and to our organizations. And I think, Gerald, I'll start with you. What are you seeing as kind of best practices that around retaining your workforce, and how has that changed in light of COVID?
Yeah, Kelly, great question. Something I'm kind of deeply passionate about. I think, attracting and keeping skilled talent, starts with understanding what workers really want. And we ran a survey last summer, so a little bit outdated, but kind of gives you a view, what's really important to people. And I don't think this has changed dramatically. So I guess, notwithstanding the most important one, which is around health concerns, the top worry for workers is going back to the way things were. So I think people do not want to lose that kind of newfound flexibility. They do not want to be required to be back in the workplace kind of daily. And we found like 40%, believe this is kind of the end of the full-time 9 to 5. And 53% of that was actually under 34, which I think is really, really important to keep in mind. And I think generally there's a huge positive coming out of this, Kathy, where, half the people believe that work-life balance is going to be much better as we go forward. I think workers want, autonomy and kind of their own personalized version of hybrid workplace, and that means different things to different people. I think people want kind of one life. I think that's really becoming, and that's kind of moving away from the 9 to 5 into kind of this concept of one life of blending work and kind of family life along the way. I mean, what was really interesting, and I guess we all know this, is more than 1 in 3 workers is a parent. So enabling people to work in a way that blends like caring responsibilities and giving them the same opportunities to move up in their career is a key priority. And that's both for men and women. I think the really key thing is the skilled tech talent really are calling the shots, and we can see by that with the rate of transformation and just the demand, incredible demand for tech and technology people. And I think what's really key for them, what we found in the survey, is they want flexibility. They're not worried about losing their job. Their top priority is really around flexibility. They know their skills are in high demand, and they feel employment is very secure. So I think the number one thing for IT workers is flexibility more than any other group.
Yeah, Jerry, I'm glad you brought that up. And in fact, I saw a survey actually done by Indeed that showed like 95% of tech workers wanted to stay remote. But they also have concerns, right? They have concerns about things like, being part of a tech hub, being able to maintain culture, and being connected and belonging. And so I think, that sense of belonging means a lot of things, especially in light of the last year. And Robert, I'm interested, the Bucks are well known, right? Your brand has now been really associated with social justice and progress and diversity and equity. I'm interested from your perspective, what are your thoughts about how do we best embrace the whole person, right? And allow, acceptance of individuals, regardless of race, sex, or any other demographic?
Yeah, so that's a loaded question, as they say, Kathy. But no, so I think you have to step back and you have to really think about, look at your current workforce, right? So when we step back and look at ours, it doesn't look like a perfect picture of America by race, gender, all those things, right? So, so our whole vision right now is how do we get there, right? And at all levels of the organization, right? So, just to be frank, mostly white males at the very top of the Bucks. And on down, it's geared more towards the male population and the non-diverse population. So we know this isn't going to be an overnight thing, but that is our vision to really get it to look like America. And so how do we do that? And I think there are some things, like, for example, affirmative action has a really, can have a really bad connotation. But, kind of how I see that is, we all have our standard rubrics of how we assess a person. And when you meet with a person, you know, what percentage of that person are you actually seeing, right? So sure, there's things like skills and things that need to be there. So that might be kind of table stakes to come work in IT or whatever the job is at Fiserv Forum. There has to be some skill there. But there are more subjective things like intelligence, integrity, and you want those things to have a voice too. So I think it's just you really have to search for those things. You have to expand the scope of your job search, whether that's taking a few more weeks or months to find that right person, just to open that up. And so these are some of the things that we're trying to figure out at the Bucks, to how to really assess the true value of an individual at the Bucks for all of our open jobs. And then over time, I think we will pivot to look more like that picture of America.
Yeah, I think, Robert, you said it well. I think it is a process by which we'll go through. It has to do with the sourcing component of it. It has to do with assessment on skills and, looking at non-traditional talent sources over time, right, to bring in new individuals and routes to tech. I think it's a good segue actually for us to maybe talk a little bit about recruiting and what we're seeing. And I know we have a polling question kind of teed up for the audience to kind of get a sense of what everybody's doing here. So if somebody could bring up the polling question. So, is that working? All right, thank you. So where do you find yourself in tech recruitment? Are you currently recruiting and finding a lot of candidates? Are you recruiting but still having a hard time finding? Are you actually decreasing, or are you staying steady? If you could just click on that, and then we'll get some results for everyone. Give it about 5 seconds. Well, maybe while we have that open, I think one of the things we're going to talk about next is really kind of tactics are we finding effective as we bring people into the organization. I'm going to close the poll, see what we get. Wow. So, 47% are still having a hard time finding candidates. So that's very interesting. And I think really an important thing as to why we talk about this topic. So I'm going to close the poll completely. And then, so maybe we'll go back to you, Jaron. What tactics are you finding to be effective in your organization as you go to attract talent?
Sure, yeah. I think, one of the key things, Kathy, we're doing with our clients is really to try and reduce the long list of requirements on job ads. And I think that's working. I think 70% of the roles we have today have fewer requirements than they did, a year ago. So, do you really need, so what's more desired than required? Like, do you really need 10 plus years of this or 15 plus years of that? Do you need a college degree? Do you not need a college degree? So I think, being more specific on your requirements is really, really important. As I said earlier, and I reiterate again, the flexibility and the autonomy is huge, particularly in the tech space. And I think a big one for me is, again, around that skills development, to attract and develop the brightest and best diverse talent. I mean, everybody, whether you want to retain somebody or you want to attract them, they want to see what's the career ahead with you. And part of that, again, goes back to that skilling and having a path, because traditional education, as we know, is not keeping up. And particularly in the tech space, the demand is just outstripping all the time the supply. So I think that longer career path for everybody and the skilling that goes with that is really important. I think as well the inclusive environment, which Rob touched on there, is really important. And I think it's not just about policies and hiring practices. It's an ongoing environment where everybody kind of wants to bring their whole self to work every day. And I think it's what's our culture, what are our values, and what are our behaviors are probably more important than any policies or hiring practices, albeit they being very important. I think they're the key things we're seeing right now on the kind of key tactics being deployed.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you. Diane, what about, your work at Johnson Controls? How are you, getting a wide candidate pools that ensures diversity in the candidate pool as well?
So first of all, we're making it part of the conversation. So when we are meeting with talent acquisition, we're asking them, how are you getting a diverse slate, and holding them accountable as well as ourselves accountable if we don't have a diverse slate. So just by making it part of the rhythm of my staff meeting, other staff meetings, and putting the conversation front and center makes it easier for us to have the conversations. We track the metrics, we report the metrics. Now, that really only helps when you have enough hiring scale for the numbers to matter, right? In smaller organizations, it's hard to move that needle. But we also are intentional about inclusion in how we operate. So I will call out publicly if I'm on a call with a supplier, and I love our suppliers. Thank you for being sponsors to this conference. But sometimes you might bring 10 people to a meeting. So we'll have 10 of your folks from an account team and 2 or 3 from mine, and there might be 0 diversity represented on that call. I will call that out and say, it is a core value of our company to be diverse. I challenge you to operate with that same diversity on what you bring. So that's not really about the hiring, but it shows how you have to be pervasive about how you operate with inclusion principles in everything that you do. I have one particular leader who's really great on a phone call. We all know it's easy to be the introvert. Okay, maybe not for extroverts, but it's easy to go silent on a call, especially when you have pandemic fatigue from being on the video. He will basically kind of do a poll. He will call out each person and say, what is your opinion? What is your thought? And make sure to drain that out. So again, it's about being inclusive in how you operate every day. And that builds muscles to be inclusive on your hiring practices. So if we're only talking about hiring, I don't think we're being wide enough in how we need to operate.
Yeah, I think, Diane, when you say that, it's actually, by creating the right culture in your environment, it also attracts talent, right? Because people tell people as well. It is, word of mouth is still the best way to bring people in. And so the more inclusive you are in your environment, the better off you
True.
are.
So I've had a number of folks internal to Johnson Controls reach out to me and say, I am so happy that we hired you. It's nice to have somebody who looks like me, essentially is what they're saying. I'm only one tiny aspect of diversity. I even look at our 4 squares on the screen and say,
Yep.
We don't have enough diversity just in what we have here, from an age and in ethnicity. And yeah, we always need to be thinking about that. But you're right. The more you attract and the more you bring in, the more momentum you build.
Yeah, Diane, I'm glad you pointed that out as well. And I think, Robert, you talked about the changing of, over time of the makeup. And I think that's true. And I think, one of the ways to do that is through early talent programs, whether that be, post-secondary graduates, 2-year degrees, non-traditional sources like apprenticeship programs, et cetera. Can you tell me a little bit about your early talent programs and how that all contributes as well?
Sure. And so we definitely embrace internships at the Bucks. And so, and then it becomes a sourcing thing, right? Where, if we go wide, we always want to hire the best, right? So, but we want that scope of the candidate pool to be pretty big so we can really dig in and hire the best. So, so as far as the internships, it's a win-win, right? So we typically have 6-month internships. We probably have about half a dozen per year. They're usually college level folks. Right now we have a junior, a sophomore, going through our business analytics internship. And so it's just a great way to give them experience and to have us hopefully vet out future talent for ourselves. But what I will say is that most of the interns don't come ultimately and work for the Bucks. But I think it's a win-win still, because we get a lot of good output from those interns. Now, I would say that we are pivoting a bit there, because if you think about Fiserv Forum and the $70 million of technology that we have there that run our broadcast technology, datacom technology, AV, there's all the operational systems like point of sale. So there's a lot there that I would kind of consider there's some of there that is more like of a blue collar technology job, and so there's a lot of not internships there, but like first jobs in technology. And we're all about cross training and getting our talent to improve themselves. So I'm seeing Fiserv Forum as a great way to engage talent that may not be that engineer grade. So I've myself with my HR VP, we've reached out to MATC. We just want to make sure that everyone is aware of these jobs so that we can reward Milwaukee and Wisconsin and help get that talent pool going. So
Thanks, Robert. I do think you're right. It's like there are entry-level jobs, and then people can continue to work their way, and can gain skills that that lead them into other career paths within tech as well. So those non-traditional routes into tech are very important. I think we're going to bring up the next poll, and this is so if you'd bring that up. We actually, Jer hit on this very early on the desire for our talent, our tech talent, to have more flexibility as we come back to normal. So we'd like to understand from everybody else, what do you think returning to normal looks like, especially in light of coming back into the office? So do we expect the majority of the folks to be remote? Do we expect 2 to 3 days, 4 to 5 days, or really don't have an idea yet? It's too early to tell based on where we are with vaccines, etc. So I'll give that seconds. All right, and we'll close that out and see what our results are. So we have kind of a mix, right? 30% would be remote, 2 to 3 days, 37%, and a good portion that haven't decided yet. So this is a very interesting poll. Dan, maybe I'll go to you. What are you guys thinking about as on the kind of return to office and the embracing of virtual workers? What does that look like?
So I have to say, I have to put my personal bias out front in front of this answer, and that I don't think there's going to be a new normal for a long time when I look at the global front. Right, we are going to be operating in a kind of a challenging environment for a long time, and there's some of us that now are just more sensitive to what can go on in the world from a health perspective, and there are those that don't want to go back to a new normal for personal health reasons, right? So I believe, as reflected in the poll, that this hybrid model will be with us for a long time. And there's been so much conversation about the individual. Are we equipping you to work at home? What will your office work look like when you go back? And those are all very valid conversations. But where I'm challenging my team, and not just IT, but other leaders to think about, is how do we create that truly hybrid collaboration environment? Right now, we're all still doing it on video. But when you go back and you've got 3 people in a conference room and 3 people remote, are we just going to go back to our old habits where you had the camera in the conference room and the people in the conference room, their heads looked like ants for, if you didn't have a significant telepresence operations. And then the folks that were in the room maybe didn't even have the video displayed for the remote participants. So it just goes back to like you were just doing the conference phone. And what tools do we really use? I'll throw out, there's the Miro and the Mural and other really online virtual collaboration tools that are out there. I think there's a blend of how we get teams to optimize as teams in this hybrid world. If somebody out there has perfected that, I want to hear about it too. But so there hasn't been, I think, enough work in that area, really, even on the global market. I work with my folks in Asia who've been back to work more in the office than we have in that hybrid mode, and they haven't figured out this. But until we really perfect that, I think we're going to limp along at something less than a great productivity model.
Yeah, Diane, I think that's a really good point, and especially if you look at the poll, I think we are going to be in this hybrid world for quite some time, right? And so being productive and leveraging technology to be productive in that hybrid world is a really good point. I recognize we have about 15 minutes left, and we want to make sure we get to question and answers. So Tina, I know you've been watching those in the background. Tina Rock is working with us here in the background. Any questions that have come in?
Yeah, we have quite a few actually. So the first being, many of the most talented leaders reside outside of technology. Some of these leaders may be interested in transitioning to a leadership role within technology. What are your thoughts on bringing in a candidate that is business driven, has strong leadership skills, but little to no tech experience to your management team?
I'll jump in there if you don't mind. So like we don't think of our projects as tech projects or HR, they're all business projects, right? So and that's the most important thing, is to speak, speak in terms of the business case, and the technology is an enabler of the business. And sure, you need to learn that. But I think there's huge opportunity for a more business focus on these technology enabled projects. So, I have some firsthand examples of hiring talent that really, they weren't technologists or IT, but they were intelligent and they would train up. Now, those were mostly first jobs, but still, I think that can be applied across all the various levels.
So I'm wide open on embracing that. Why do we think that somebody who has been in technology their whole career is the only one who could successfully deliver on projects? And part of my bias is probably because for the first 10 years of my career, I didn't report into IT. I'll call it shadow IT where I was, right? So technology is everywhere. Digital is everywhere. I said on a call to my team this morning, there's a group over there that is far more advanced in the kinds of technology they're developing than what we're doing in some corners of IT, and that's okay. And we should be enabling them and embracing them. So I think it's another part of that inclusive equation.
And I would say the same, Kathy. Totally echo the comments from Rob and Diane. In fact, I mean, you need technology people for sure, but I think, when I'm hiring now, when I look at through the lens of hiring, I'm looking for more people that can understand the business, where the business are, where they're going, and then being able to work with technology vendors to provide the services and products we need. So I think it's a great opportunity actually for people that might feel a little nervous on the other side to make that leap across into the tech world.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys mentioned that. My background also was in tech, but went from marketing professional to systems program. So it's certainly, people can learn this stuff, right? I think that's an important piece of the message here. All right, Tina, other questions?
Yeah, how are major industry shifts like SASE and digital transformation changing the way you think about better leveraging the talent you have?
I can start with that one, Kathy. Again, I think what we're seeing is, definitely some jobs that existed pre-COVID with the speed of transformation will not exist going forward. That's a reality. But I think what a lot of companies are doing is moving people to higher value roles in the organization. And I think at the end of the day, there will be more jobs out of digital transformation and AI and automation. There'll be more actually jobs created than there's lost. So I think the opportunity is still vast, but I can see a big shift in people moving from more mundane tasks, obviously, as they get automated, into higher value roles. And again, that's where the career pathing and the skills and the upskilling is super important.
Yeah, I mean, like one of the most exciting things about tech, right, are like all the inflection points that I've experienced in the past 30 years. So change is the constant in tech, right? So when you go to new digital transformation models, SaaS, 5G, VR, AR, these are all things. And I think it comes down to like, does the talent have that curiosity quotient, not just the IQ, but that CQ? And that's that passion to want to learn the new things. And so it just opens up more and more opportunities for those people inside the org, outside partners that want to dig in deep and see where those can impact the business in a positive way.
Thanks, everybody. What about Tina? Other ones?
How are you using alternate sources of talent like deep partnerships, crowdsourcing, and freelancers, to name a few? And that question comes from Carrie Hoffman of Get Digital Velocity.
Anyone leveraging the freelancer market, et cetera?
So we're heavily supported by non-employee resources. Let me say that from a broad perspective. I know in other geographic markets, I can take advantage of. For example, there's a veteran training organization that I can take advantage of, but they don't have operations in Milwaukee. So that's why I'm struggling that. How do I answer that locally? But we need to, and I think Robert and Jerry, you both made this point earlier in the conversation, we need to be looking everywhere for tech talent.
Yeah, so so like I said, we have a certain number of full-time employees, but then at Fiserv Forum, right, for a concert, for a Bucks game, we ramp up, right? But those are like part-time positions. On the tech side, they're operator positions to operate the scoreboards and the digital signage and POS, all that type of thing. So that's where we do engage a lot of freelance. And I think what I've seen is that it seems like the pool of freelancers is fairly small for these, highly specialized skills, but the skills can be taught. And that's where I go back. I want to open that up to really engage with some of our platforms like MATC, MSOE, and those talent pools, because there's a lot of technology there, and it's really cool and exciting, and I think we can use that as a training grounds effectively.
Go ahead, Jer.
Yeah, Kathy, I mean, we're on the supply side of this, so we obviously see a lot of different models being deployed. I think Rob makes a great point again, that we have to look at where is the look at the universities, take on people a little bit earlier in their career, and then coach and mentor and develop them as we go. I think the other good thing about COVID is the channels are much wider now, so they don't have to be in Milwaukee, they don't have to be in the local region, they don't have to be in the country. So I think the whole flexibility model is opened up, and people are a lot more flexible about how they hire people. What we are definitely seeing, obviously, is still a bit of nervousness on people taking on full time, so a lot more part time roles for now. Hopefully, as the economy stabilizes and the vaccine gets rolled out, we'll see a bit more pickup on the permanent side of things. But yeah, a lot of companies very flexible on their approach today, particularly on the tech side, as you would imagine.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Jerry. And I think actually it's an area that Milwaukee has an opportunity in front of us, right, as well, as people, move to be quality of life, back home to friends and family, cost of living, et cetera, creates a new talent pool by embracing the remote workers, et cetera. And like you, we're kind of, the Tech Hub Coalition is focused on the supply side of that equation associated with, we just announced an apprenticeship program and have other non-traditional talent development programs as well. So if anybody has questions, we'd be happy to have a conversation. Other questions, Tina?
Yeah, how do you prioritize the following types of hires? One, hiring enough people just to handle the basic blocking and tackling, tier 1 and 2 type of everyday business. And number 2, hiring the right strategic employees can continuously improve your security posture, assuming this means you can hire fewer of them due to cost, availability, et cetera.
So my general philosophy on this is this talent is a continuum, and I need to be growing my own. So hire for potential and then teach skills. And then we have the flexibility internally to shift to project work, operations work, security work, and building a more resilient workforce. So again, I'm new to Johnson Controls, so this isn't the kind of thing that we've been able to enact yet here, but it's the kind of principles that I used from previous organizations and plan to build. So from a hiring practices perspective, I don't have to be as precise on doing that forecast on the front end if I'm hiring for potential and then teaching people what they need internally.
No, I think that's really, really well said. Just to kind of go back, I think this ask about strategic employees versus tactical employees, but I'll use one of my favorite lines from Lou Gerstner, the former CEO of IBM, said, strategy is a commodity, execution is an art form. So, strategy is very important, but ideas come a dime a dozen in a lot of times, and it's being able to really implement and support and have those ideas be long lasting. So back to Diane's point, hiring the potential and the people that can make things happen like that can get around ideas and strategies more important than the people that actually come up with the ideas. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, I would totally concur. I think you articulated that really well. I mean, I always say hire for attitude and go from there. And I think, again, people want to see that continuum. People want to see that career path. They can't stick doing the same job for 4 or 5 years like we may have done in the past, because the skills are moving so quick, the technology is moving so quick. So I think you have an opportunity to come in anywhere on that continuum and keep climbing the ladder. And that's the exciting thing about tech or non-tech at this moment in time.
Yeah, so thank you guys all. I think we're at end of time, but I took away 3 big points from this discussion today of things. If we're going to continue to expand the tech talent population and attract more to tech, I think I heard 3 things. We have to embrace flexibility, right? That is a desire of the workforce as we go, and we need to look at how do we embrace that going forward. I heard embracing potential and hiring on potential and upskilling on potential, and that ability to look at non-traditional routes. And then the third one I heard is embracing diversity and the whole self and individuals from many different backgrounds, whether that's a diversity in background, a diversity in skill sets, a diversity in demographic that leads to better innovation if we embrace that diversity. So with that, I would like to say welcome to all 3 of you, because you're all relatively new to the Milwaukee region. We're very happy to have you all here and look forward to working together as we go forward. So thank you all very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Kathy.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day.